Hi everybody, I'm back for this year's Monster Week, a week where D&D creators of all sizes are invited to create a video about a monster type hosted by Ginny D and Pointy Hat. Last year I was happy to participate with dragons, and this year I'm even more excited for Fey Week. If you haven't seen the other videos from Fey Week yet, I highly encourage you to go click on the playlist, after this video of course, and check out some of the other fantastic videos made by some very talented creators. Now, when I heard that the theme for Monster Week this year would be Fey, I was very interested. Not just because it's a topic that I do enjoy and love, but because it would give me a chance to try something that has been on my mind for almost 2 years. Creating villain stat blocks that you can use for your campaigns. But of course, not just any villains. The ones from your childhood. The ones you grew up with that showed you what true evil was. The bad, the worse, and even the morally complex. Now, this will grow to include villains from all forms of pop culture eventually, and kind of already has in the past, but we will be starting officially today with characters from the, I don't want to say their name to invoke their attention, but the House of Mouse, shall we say. And what villain from their collection of animated classics fits perfectly with this week's theme? Well, the almighty mistress of evil herself, Maleficent. Now, let's explain what my plan and goals are with this idea. I want to make a stat block that feels like Maleficent in personality and has abilities from the iconic moments that she has in the movie. I also want to give you guidelines for how I would run an adventure that would loosely follow the structure of this classic story, as well as some magic items that can be claimed as loot. Of course, all the stat blocks and magic items will be available for free, but before we get into that, let's jump into the meat of it. A big starting point for this will be, what am I using as the base for my interpretation of Maleficent? There are 4 major sources that I will be addressing, and they are Sleeping Beauty, the Disney classic that was released in 1959, the Perrault version of the story, published in 1695, the Grimm Brothers version, published in 1812, and the Maleficent movies that were released in 2014 and 2019. Best as I can tell, the Perrault version is the closest entry on this list that can be considered the original tale. Although, when it comes to any story that has survived hundreds of years, the term original version isn't quite accurate, as these stories often have many interesting connections to previous tales. But an important question is, why do any of these other stories matter for what I'm doing? Well, because these other versions and early interpretations will give us some extra context and ideas that we can draw on for how we want to run our D&D game, which, just like each of these other stories, will be a different version of this classic tale. Now, this isn't a history video, but I am going to go over some interesting plot points that were left out of the animated movie that pertain to the core characters of our story. First off, the evil fairy, or Maleficent, isn't really a big character in the historical versions. She just kinda inflicts the curse and then leaves for the rest of the story. In the Grimm Brothers version, she wasn't even a fairy, she was just an old wise lady upset that she wasn't invited. Now, this could be a Christianization thing, but what's a bit funnier to me is that in the Perrault version, the reason that she wasn't invited was because she had been trapped in a tower for years and everyone thought she was dead. When she showed up, the king did his best to make up for this and got her a seat, but he had made 7 custom golden plates for the other fairies and couldn't just make one appear for her. This is what the fairy took offense to. She grumbled about it, and the youngest fairy, the one who would eventually be adapted into my goat Merryweather, asked if she could go last so that she could nullify the curse the best she could. The offended fairy inflicts the curse so that the infant princess will pierce her hand on a spinning needle and die from it before the younger fairy changes it with her gift to sleeping for 100 years. And yeah, I guess I should mention here that in the original tales, both here and in the Brothers Grimm version, Sleeping Beauty falls asleep for 100 years along with the rest of the castle. In the Perrault version, it's because the fairy realizes that if she sleeps for 100 years, she's going to have a really bad time waking up to all of her friends and family long gone. But in the Brothers Grimm version, it just sort of happens. Now, after 100 years, the destined prince is out hunting where he finds the castle and finds the sleeping princess, or Briar Rose, and wakes her up. This is where the Grimm story ends, but in Perrault's tale, he marries her in secret, has 2 kids with her, covering it all up by telling his parents that he's out hunting. Now, the reason he does this is because his mother is an ogre and would eat his children, and while this is all very interesting, I would recommend that you go read the story yourself. It'll take you less time than watching this video to read it, and the epilogue is honestly just very entertaining. Then there is the animated classic, Sleeping Beauty. I'm going to assume you've seen this movie, and if you haven't, go watch it. Once Upon a Dream is a beautiful song, and there's a lot of very fantastic animation in it. But the core story beats are Aurora is born, King Stefan and the Queen invite everyone except Maleficent to a party, Maleficent is offended and puts a curse on Aurora, the goat Merryweather undermines the curse the best she can, the fairies raise Aurora in secret to try and keep her safe and outrun the deadline of the curse, renaming her to Briar Rose while she's in hiding. Aurora and Prince Philip fall in love after meeting once, which is convenient because they're already betrothed to each other, even though neither of them knows that the other is their betrothed. At the last moment, Maleficent finds Aurora and is able to charm her into pricking her finger on the spinning wheel, and she falls into a deep magical sleep. The fairies make the most unhinged decision to just put everyone to sleep so they won't be sad about the princess still falling victim to the curse. Prince Philip gets jumped by Maleficent's goons and kidnapped by her. The fairies launch a rescue mission, and when Maleficent realizes what's happened, she surrounds the kingdoms in thorns to stop Prince Philip before flying to the spot in front of him, turning into a dragon and trying to kill him. Prince Philip strikes Maleficent the dragon down in a 1v1 with some magical fairy intervention. Prince Philip then wakes up Sleeping Beauty with true love's kiss, and the rest of the party goers wake up and everyone lives happily ever after. And lastly, the Maleficent movies. What surely would be what I lean on most for this character dive and something that I could use as a helpful resource. And yeah, I'm gonna almost ignore them entirely. Now, I'm not going to talk about how good or bad they are as standalone films, mostly because I don't really think you can. These movies represent themselves as what is the true version of the story, and because something, the animated version of the story is what everybody knows. But the problem with that is that the stories are so radically and fundamentally different, specifically with the endings, that this interpretation comes off nonsensical. Because everyone who would spread the animated movie version of the story is very dead, and everyone who is alive to tell the story would have no reason to spread the story in such a way that the version of the story that we all know would even be told. Now, if you like these movies, that's great, and I'm legitimately happy that you get what you want out of them. But the bottom line is that Sleeping Beauty's Maleficent is not the Maleficent movie version of Maleficent. They look similar, and the characters around them have the same names, but they're nowhere near even similar when it comes to characterization. They also committed character assassination on my girl Merryweather, and that's unforgivable, but I digress. Mostly because I think that the original movie has very interesting concepts and ideas, but they're executed in such a way that when it ties itself to the original movie, it all just kind of loses me. The Lana Del Rose version of Once Upon a Dream is absolute peak though, and I have been playing it on repeat while writing the script. Now with all this information, we come to the point of the adventure, and here's where I'm going to give you general guidelines and a loose structure of the adventure, complete with choices that I can imagine players I've run games for choosing. This won't give every option, and it won't even really have hard rules, but this is how I will typically run adventures. I will have loose structures, but the people I have run for will make decisions that I have never thought of and would never think of. And so while I love prepping and possibly even over-prepping for my sessions, I typically will keep a loose structure like this and then flush out the things that I know my players will focus on. If you use anything I talk about today, you're always welcome to change anything I put out and make it your own. But the specifics of what I have today will be up to you and your DMing style. But with that, let's begin this story. Once upon a time, there was a little girl born as a princess in a faraway land to a set of human parents, King Stephen and Queen Lee. While this alone would have been cause for celebration, the addition that the sun god, the patron deity of the land, had blessed the child with the body of a celestial Azamar, pushed the parents to the point of overwhelming joy. They invited all of the friends and allies of the nation to celebrate the birth of their child, who would surely grow up to lead the kingdom to a new age of prosperity, a child who would someday become Queen Ayn. These invitations were sent to kingdoms all across the land, and even to other realms. Minor celestials, metallic dragons, and the Seelie Fae were all in attendance of what would surely be a joyous event. The Fae of the dark and cold Unseelie court, however, received no such invitation. This displeased Venestra, the Unseelie Archfey that lived in the forest just outside the kingdom's borders. This exclusion would offend anyone, but to an Archfey neighbor, Venestra could only view this as the highest personal insult, and it would be paid for in kind. So on the day of the celebration, with everyone invited in attendance, the Unseelie Archfey used her magic to appear before the king and queen, and when she was given no apology and shown no respect, she gave the child a curse as recompense. The child would grow into everything that was expected of her, but before her 21st birthday, she would prick her finger on a spinning needle and drop dead. She then let out a laugh and disappeared into a cloud of smoke. Despite the power of all those that had attended the celebration, there was no way to remove the curse of a powerful archfey, as their magic can find strength in ways that other spellcasters cannot. The only hope that they had was a final Seelie Fey that had suspected an event like this and had waited for Venestra to make her move. This Fey's name was Brigide, and she looked upon the child Ein and blessed her that if she should prick her finger on a spinning wheel, she would instead fall asleep for 100 years, or until someone who held a true and unconditional love for her would wake her from her slumber. While the celebration quickly died, Brigide spoke to the king and queen, asking them what they would be willing to do to save their daughter. When they responded with anything, the Fae nodded and turned, flying away thoughtfully. The next morning, instead of a baby, there was a note in the princess's cradle. It read, "You said you would offer anything to keep your princess free. Curses I cannot break, but she can still flee. Near a spinning wheel she shall never be, until past her age of 21. On that day the curse will be done, and fear not, before then her life will be filled with fun. Merriment, tea, and charms of glee will her days be, until the day no curse will give her need to run." The king and queen were outraged in private, but were left with little choice. They had no idea where the Seelie court member could have hidden away their daughter. So to avoid showing weakness, they spread the tale that they had worked together with the Seelie court to outwit the Unseelie, and that their daughter would outlive the curse despite the Archfey Venestra's best efforts. And so the tale was spread for 21 years. In those 21 years, Princess Ein was raised in secret by 3 fairies chosen by Brigide: Ivy, Birdie, and Avelia. While they did not tell her anything of her true identity, the Fae did teach her all sorts of magics, arts, Fae customs, and everything that she would need to survive, as well as how to take care of herself. What her 3 characters did not know about, however, is how she would travel on certain nights. While the Princess Ein, now known as Briar Rose, would sleep tucked in her warm bed inside her cozy cottage in the forest, her mind would reach out across miles to talk to a young boy around the same age. The name of this young half-orc boy was Ryder, the prince of a nearby kingdom allied to Ein's kingdom, who was in attendance on the fateful day that the curse was placed on her. At least once a month they would meet in their dreams, becoming friends over the 2 decades Ein was in hiding. Neither, however, had any idea that the other was real, nor did either have an inkling to the other's true identity. Both grew to see the other as a source of comfort and a dear friend, but they also believed that the other was little more than a reoccurring dream, something similar to, but stronger than, an imaginary friend. Eventually, the fateful day of Princess Ein's 21st birthday arrived. On his way to the upcoming celebration for the return of Princess Ein, Prince Ryder heard something in the forest that he was traveling through. As he rode his horse, the beautiful voice of a woman came from deeper in the trees, and while every ounce of his survival instinct told him not to listen, he could not bring himself to turn away and leave. This could have been the product of Fey magics that Briar Rose was weaving without ill intent, or it could have been a natural burning curiosity by the prince. But the most likely reason Ryder had to investigate the source of the song was because the beautiful song sounded so familiar. When the two met, there was a small amount of awkward greetings before they both realized that the other was not a stranger. They had met and talked many times upon many dreams. At that moment, though, they both realized that they needed to be somewhere else. Prince Ryder to the castle and Briar Rose to her caretakers. They agreed to meet again that night, and if something went wrong, they promised to explain it all in their next dream. That meeting, however, was not to be. On her return to the cottage, Princess Ein's true history and parentage was revealed by her caretakers, who insisted that they must make haste to the castle in secret. Meanwhile, on Prince Ryder's arrival to the castle, he could not wait to see his dream companion again, and left the party early to see her immediately. If either had stayed where they were, perhaps the rest would not have come to pass, but curses can sometimes pull on the strings of fate themselves, and Venestra would not be defeated so easily. In her castle, Venestra had watched everything carefully, plotting and waiting for her curse to take effect. And for years she waited, making pacts and deals to gain power and ensure that the princess would not live to see the morning of her 21st year. Now, in the last minutes before the curse would end, it was her time to strike. She split her consciousness into 2 simulacrums and sent each on their own mission. The first was sent to the castle, where it found the princess alone for only a moment. The simulacrum placed a powerful charm that compelled her to prick her finger on a spinning wheel that was conjured into existence. And in an instant, the princess fell victim to the curse and the blessing charm in the same moment. She fell onto the floor, waiting for either 100 years or until someone who held a true and unconditional love for her would wake her from the curse. Deep in the forest, the second simulacrum of Venestra awaited with forces in case Ayn would return home. Instead, Prince Ryder came to the door and knocked, accidentally opening the unlocked door. When he stepped inside, he was assailed by Venestra's forces, who restrained him. The simulacrum questioned the young man and then realized that he was there looking for the princess. She made the decision to take the prince captive as well. After all, there was no reason that the child of an allied nation could not suffer as well, and also, she could tell there was some sort of magical bond between the two. Back at the castle, Ivy, Birdie, and Avelia found the princess, who had succumbed to the curse. In a flurry of terror at their failure, the 3 went about to set all of the palace to sleep. A deep, magical sleep that would only last as long or as short as the princess slept for. Now this is what all the tales of Venestra, Princess Ayn, and Prince Ryder have in common. Beyond this is where the stories diverge into many paths, characters, and endings. But those stories are for you to tell. Now, all of that was the setting of this adventure, and here is where your players come into the story. Now, who are these characters? Why are they here? That's up to you and your players. Nobles were probably invited for what was going to be a week-long celebration. If they were a guard or knight, they could be escorting a noble from their own kingdom, or perhaps they were sent to escort them by King Stephen and Queen Lee. If you're looping this into a current campaign, maybe the party just got an invite because they're up-and-coming heroes, and any one of the nobles would be happy to get on their good side a little more. More mischievous characters may have been looking to make some nobles' pockets lighter, or perhaps entertainers were hoping to perform and get their names spread across the land, since this is going to be a very large event. Your party will arrive at the celebrations a few hours late because of a broken wagon wheel. However, they know something is wrong long before they actually arrive in the castle. The sounds of celebration are nowhere to be found, and everything is unsettlingly quiet. As they enter the castle, they will see everyone collapsed on the ground, and upon investigation, they are under a magical sleep that they cannot be woken from. The players will assumedly look around for the cause of the sleep, but even if they don't, the 3 fairies will stumble upon the group and ready themselves to put this party to sleep as well, before they get an alternative idea. Ivy, Birdie, and Avelia are very panicked, but they will ask the party for help. They will explain that they had been raising Princess Ayn to keep her safe from the curse, but at the last moments when they left her alone, Venestra snuck her away and caused the princess to fall victim to the curse. The trio will explain that the curse can be lifted by someone with a true and unconditional love for her, but they aren't sure that there is anyone who would fit those restrictions. However, the princess did mention someone that she'd met in the forest earlier that day, and perhaps that boy could be the key. It's a long shot, but the fairies are so worked up that they seem to be realizing everything as they are talking through it, all moment to moment. If the players need some convincing to do the quest, the trio will offer a favor of the Sealy Court, or at least as strong of a favor that they can provide on the party's success on doing whatever is needed to remove the curse before the 100-year deadline. If the party accepts the job, the fairies will teleport them to the forest, coming along to show them the cabin. When they approach, the house will show signs of a struggle, with the inside being a mess and the door hanging from a single hinge. As they enter, Venestra's simulacrum will appear, as she has been waiting to taunt the Fey trio with her victory of the success of the curse, and the kidnapping of the only one who could possibly lift it early. She will remark on the party's appearance, but will largely ignore them, feeling victorious and willing to monologue. Now, this does not mean it's time for your party to be quiet. They should be welcome to interrupt their moment of victory and draw attention to themselves if they want. She will just be annoyed and look down on them for it. If the party attacks, the simulacrum has 10 hit points and will die mocking the party without putting up a fight. Now the fairies must turn to the party to carry out the rest of the mission on their own. They cannot invade the territory of an Unseelie without proper cause, since it would start a war between the 2 courts, and they cannot allow that. They will, however, give the party blessings to aid them on their quest, temporarily or or permanently, depending on how kind you're feeling, enhancing their weapons to increase their odds of success. Lastly, they will give some reflavored health potions and then offer to teleport the party as close as it can to Venestra's castle. Now, the players will need to determine how they would like to deal with the problem in front of them, and there will be many options. They could take the course of action from the movie, sneaking in to find Prince Ryder, freeing him, and then fighting their way out and running back to the castle to lift the curse, fighting Venestra at the last moment alongside Prince Ryder. However, this isn't a movie. This is D&D, and the players are always welcome to find their own solutions. They could rush the castle, fighting all creatures in their way to reach Venestra herself, dealing with her in her lair at full strength, and with all the lair actions that comes along with. They could focus on getting Prince Philip out quietly, taking only fights that they can end instantly, and then when they get Prince Philip to the castle, he is able to wake Princess Ayn, breaking the curse. And this could leave to the party arguing for peace, or charging Venestra's castle with all the knights of the kingdom behind them, along with a warrior prince and an archfey warlock princess that are very personally invested in Venestra's defeat. They will still be dealing with an archfey at full power in this case, but her reinforcements will be much more limited, as well as having powerful personal allies on the side of the party. But regardless, this will be your version of the story, and there are far more options that I can't even imagine for what you could do. I always want to leave a lot of flexibility for my players, and that will also go for any adventures that I release for you here. In the description, you'll be able to download a PDF for free from my Ko-Fi or Patreon with everything I've written for this adventure, including stat blocks, magical blessings, loot, and more. If you run anything using what I've written or said here today, I hope you enjoy it. And if you do, feel free to leave a comment letting me know how it went. With all that, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to check out the other videos for Fey Week. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and I will see you next time. Hey, it's Post-Editing Nochez here, and I just wanted to let you know that if you're watching this on the day of upload, the PDF is not in the description yet. It will be going up Sunday, when I will be doing a stream, finishing up a few of the things I didn't have time to finish before the release of the video. I will also be going over things that I didn't have time to go over in this video, small character moments and ideas that I had for some of these characters, as well as making Venestra's entire castle, which will all be included in the PDF. If you haven't watched any other Fey Week videos, I highly recommend it. There are a lot of very talented creators, and it's very cool. If you like anything that I made here, please subscribe, and I will catch you next time.